When the Smiths split up, I was at a loss for what to do. Paul McCartney's boss was going to ask me to go. All right, I was going to deal with everything that transpired shortly thereafter. All of my connections were severed when my band disbanded. The star of the show was never John Marr. He didn't try to win people over with dancing, lead singing, or smiling. But as soon as a light, frantic guitar line pierced the air, everyone knew it was him. It resembled ideas that had yet to be expressed woven into a melody. As the frontman of the Smiths, a band that represented a whole generation of dissatisfied youth in Britain in the 1980s, Johnny Marr did more than just compose music, he evoked feelings. Marr offered each song a language without words, while Morrissey gave voice to loneliness and wrath. The heaviness of youth, the Manchester air, and the longing to escape the weary world around him were all present in his guitar. Johnny Marr was raised in a dreary housing complex with dashed dreams after being born into an Irish working-class household. Being famous was never his destiny. He never attended a music school. He lacked a studio of his own. His only possessions were a guitar and the sense that he was out of place. How did a young man who was raised in an immigrant worker's household and always felt different end up becoming one of the 20th century's most significant musicians? Both his music and the man himself, an artist who never lost his personality amid the chaos of fame, hold the key to the solution. This is the narrative of Johnny Marr, who subtly altered the definition of honesty in art, not as the former Smiths guitarist. Youth. On October 31, 1963, Johnny Marr was born in South Manchester's impoverished working-class neighbourhood of Ardwick. Despite their lack of wealth, his Irish parents took great pride in their family. They put up a lot of effort. His father, John Marr, worked as a window man. His mother, Frances, was employed at a laundromat. The only thing that gave life a sense of space in their little, decaying plaster apartment, which smelt like coal all winter, was music. The Marr house was constantly noisy. Irish folk tunes from the radio, American rock and roll, and Motown soul. When John was 3 years old, his grandfather made him a wooden toy guitar. Being a singer was more than just a dream to him. In his own words, it felt like something that understood me. Even as a young child, John Marr felt that he didn't belong. Other children sat and played computer games, talked football, or played outside. However, the slender, brown-haired child was obsessed with mod coats from the 1960s, shoes, and strange guitar licks. Making shoes used to be his ideal career, and he even applied to Adidas. However, his dream was forever altered when he first held a Fender Jaguar. There was something in Marr that no one could teach him, and he was trapped in a drab world of school rules and the rigid regulations of post-World War II British conservatism. A silent uprising powerful enough to influence people's opinions without ever raising a fuss. He began playing in local garage rock bands when he was 13 years old. He learned what he knew about music on his own, although many assumed he had classical instruction because of his keen ear and innate sense of rhythm. He didn't. When Marr was 15, he dropped out of school and started working part-time at a shoe store. He played music at night and worked during the day. He traveled to distant gigs on the weekends via bus. There was a possibility that he might succeed since he possessed a feeling that cannot be taught or inherited. And that's what prompted him to knock on the door of Morrissey, another outcast. When he did so one day in May 1982, British music began to quietly shift. Early in the workday. By the conclusion of the industrial era, Manchester was a damaged city in 1982. The air seemed moist, many young people lost their jobs, and several factories closed. But because of that melancholy, a new kind of music emerged that was sharper, more introspective, and cooler than punk. Johnny Marr, however, sensed that he needed a poet. She could express things that no one else could, but she wasn't a very good vocalist. In May of that year, Marr rode his bike to the Stretford neighborhood. Then he went to 384 Kings Road and knocked on the door. The phone was answered by Stephen Patrick Morrissey. He was 23, unemployed, living with his mother, and surrounded by unopened record company letters and Oscar Wilde books. Their conversation was brief. However, what they witnessed permanently altered the tone of British music as well as their own lives. The Smiths were born within a few weeks. From the first practice, Marr was a standout. He made no effort to appear ostentatious. Heavy riffs and beats are absent. Instead, he blended 1960s pop, funk, and folk with a lot of harsh, jangling chords. A peculiar yet appealing sound that stood in stark contrast to the punk and new wave trends of the day. Morrissey's writing was incisive and elegant. Marr composed music that was both elegant and incisive. It was immediately apparent to both of them that they were unique. The Smiths signed with Rough Trade within a year. Although their debut single, Hand in Glove, didn't reach the top of the charts, it sent a subliminal tremor through the underground. When this charming man appeared, everything was different. No one had ever heard a guitar sound so rapid and clear, simultaneously joyful and melancholic. Between 1983 and 1987, Marr and Morrissey wrote a number of well-known songs, including How Soon Is Now, Big Mouth Attacks Again, Panic, Heaven Knows I'm Sad Right Now. Marr was much more than just a songwriter. He selected the equipment, produced, arranged, and even altered the bass and drum sound. He was performing the labor of 3 persons behind the scenes. It was stressful, but it went smoothly really quickly. Marr began to feel imprisoned by the music he had contributed to, and Morrissey grew increasingly violent and domineering. He sought to expand the Smiths' repertoire to include American rock, funk, and even movie soundtracks. Morrissey wanted to continue singing about red meat, Thatcher, and loneliness in England. The altercation was approaching but had not yet broken out. After every performance, Marr would drive home by himself through Manchester's shadowy alleys, wondering only, is this still my band? Achievement at work. On the day Johnny Marr left the Smiths, there were no altercations, shouting, or stage fires. The decision was silent and unchangeable. In 1987, just as the band was rapping on Strange Ways, Here We Come, Marr disappeared for a few days during a recording session. Then he sent a brief message to Morrissey. He had no intention of coming back. Supporters felt the conclusion was rushed and harsh. For Johnny Marr, however, it was a matter of survival. For 4 years, Marr had overseen the Smiths' creative infrastructure. In addition to playing guitar, piano, bass, and occasionally even programming drums, he composed all of the songs and assembled the recordings. Marr, however, publicly disapproved of Morrissey's complete control over the band's image and lyrics, including the album covers. They also feel like they are only a singing machine, must constantly tour, and cope with media pressure. Later, Morrissey would describe Marr's departure as a wound that never healed, and Marr would bluntly tell someone, I knew I was going to kill myself if I stayed. Marr didn't turn around. It might have been a hazardous move for someone else to leave a well-known band at the age of 23. However, Johnny Marr did not collapse into nothing. He simply chose a different path, one that was centered on music rather than the spotlight or the tabloids. He performed with Chrissie Hynde, then joined the Pretenders as their touring guitarist. She picked up leadership skills from a strong woman there. Then he joined the darker avant-pop band The, led by Matt Johnson. Marr's skills have improved as a result of being compelled to play moodier, less rhythmic songs. Marr and New Order's Bernard Sumner co-founded Electronic in 1989. He collaborated on the project alongside Pet Shop Boys' Neil Tennant as well. The project gave Marr the opportunity to experiment with computer music, which resulted in the smash song, Getting Away With It. It was the first time Marr's guitar was played on dance floors, and the audience adored it. In the 1990s, he was Britain's most sought-after studio guitarist. Beck, the Talking Heads, Brian Ferry, Lisa Germano, and everyone else who was anything wanted Marr's guitar. It was remarkable, however, that he never interfered with the music. He would appear, make his mark as Marr, and then disappear without a word. According to some reviewers, he inspired others to pursue careers in music. Artists just referred to him as Johnny, which translates to, the one who doesn't need an introduction. It wasn't until 2013 that Johnny Marr's debut solo album, The Messenger, was released. That came after 30 years of fulfilling the desires of others. It was also odd that it didn't sound like the Smiths. Marr's music was lively, enthusiastic, and cheerful rather than depressing and humorous. It's almost hopeful. He sang in his own voice. Honest enough to be trusted, but not flawless or flawless. He had no desire to return to the past or be Morrissey. He was expressing something entirely fresh about growing older, being independent, and being free. Playland, 2014, Call the Comet, 2018, and particularly Fever Dreams PTS 1-4, 2022, added more noises to Marr's realm. He experimented with everything from indie rock to ambient to dream pop to movie scores, but he consistently stayed true to his signature sound: clear, clipped riffs, interwoven guitar layers, and compositions that sound straightforward yet have a lasting impact when they fade. Life in general. Johnny Marr seems to be from a different era because many well-known musicians these days are connected to drug use, extramarital affairs, and psychological turmoil. Not a tale. No front pages of newspapers. No twisted tales of love. One woman and a love story spanning over 4 decades. Marr had remained with his high school girlfriend, Arnie Brown, the entire time. The Smiths married in 1985, at the height of their fame. Prior to that, they played in a garage band and traveled throughout Europe on lengthy, exhausting tours. Marr made the decision to start a family, not in an ostentatious or noisy manner, but as a peaceful basis for all that followed, while Morrissey decided to keep to himself and gradually drifted apart. They have 2 children, Niall and Sunny. Marr always found time to feel at home, despite his constant travels and recording. He declined numerous lengthy tours and, unlike many of his contemporaries, never relocated to Los Angeles. He always returned to his Manchester home after a job. In interviews, Marr rarely discusses his wife. He believes that true love speaks for itself without the need for words, not because he wants to hide her. Additionally, his lifestyle differs greatly from what most people associate with rock stars. He has been a vegetarian since 1985. He doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs, and stopped drinking in 2000. His sole motivation is to maintain mental clarity for writing. Marr also made the decision to run lengthy distances rather than attend late-night parties. He has completed numerous races and runs more than 20 kilometers every day. He has always found that running helps him decompress and tune out the outside world. There has been pain in my life, though, and as a result, individuals in the industry frequently refer to him as the monk of British rock. Not because he's shy, but because he keeps a quiet internal discipline. He's loyal, focused, and surprisingly resistant to the pull of the spotlight. Marr's close friend and former bandmate Andy Rourke struggled with drug usage and later cancer. Marr was the only one of their old buddies who remained. He assisted Rourke in getting back on track and covered some of the cost of his treatment. Marr, a silent supporter, wrote a private letter of condolence to Rourke's family upon his passing in 2023 rather than publicly expressing his feelings. In a world where celebrity relationships frequently end abruptly, Johnny Marr's marriage is the exception. Since he exemplifies loyalty, he doesn't need to idealize it. Power and history. Johnny Marr was the one who turned those ideas into music, but Morrissey was the one who sung about loneliness. The fact that he accomplished it without singing a single note is the most astounding thing. Marr offered British rock a new language to talk in the 1980s with his open chords, airy riffs that sounded like smoke floating, and tonal mixtures of post-punk, funk, and folk. It was utterly fascinating, but it wasn't noisy or ostentatious. The Smiths would never have achieved fame if it weren't for their sound. His guitar tones and melodies have been incorporated in the music of other bands since Johnny Marr, including Radiohead, Blur, Oasis, The Killers, Interpol, and Arctic Monkeys. I learned more from Johnny Marr in the first 2 years of my life than I ever did from any music teacher, Noel Gallagher once stated. The first person who made the guitar feel like feelings, according to Tom York, was Marr. Marr is frequently cited by critics as the most significant British guitarist since the Beatles. This is because he transformed the rhythm guitar's function from assisting the melody to serving as the song's emotional center. The BBC, Rolling Stone, and NME have all referred to him as one of the greatest guitarists. He played as though he were narrating a story, not because he was quick or technically proficient. In 2013, Johnny Marr received the Godlike Genius Award from NME. This award is given to those who have influenced the creation of music, not the most well-known individuals. He received a Lifetime Achievement Award for his musical efforts from the Ivor Novello Awards that same year. Marr's influence extends much beyond studio recordings. Younger musicians such as Ed O'Brien, Radiohead, Johnny Greenwood, Alex Turner, Arctic Monkeys, and James Dean Bradfield, Manic Street Preachers, look up to him not only as a musical mentor but also as a role model for how to live a strong, honest, and unfazed life. His 2016 autobiography, Set the Boy Free, was regarded by many as one of the most candid in the music business. It reinforced the notion that he is an artist who lives by values rather than accolades. It's about the path of a person who struggled to remain true to himself in the face of fame, something that few artists ever accomplish, rather than scandals. But it's possible that Johnny Marr's influence goes beyond accolades and album sales. It's much easier to answer, how many people began playing guitar after listening to This Charming Man? The music industry that the Smiths once transformed is quite different from the one in which Johnny Marr turned 60. These days, social media buzz, popular videos, and streams are used to gauge success. He maintains his composure and clarity despite the chaos, and all he wants is to continue being himself. Marr lost a really significant person in 2023. The Smiths' lead singer and boyhood buddy Andy Rourke passed away from pancreatic cancer. Marr was grieving more than simply the loss of a gifted artist. A piece of youth that would never return was gone. He was not interviewed, and he was not given a significant homage. Instead, as if music was the only way he knew how to say farewell, he composed a brief, silent letter and then composed a final guitar track featuring Rourke. Marr was quietly depressed, but he persisted. He accompanied James on their North American tour in 2024. In 1985, this same band performed for the Smiths. In almost 20 performances, Marr combined Smiths' hits like Panic and How Soon Is Now, with solo smashes like Armatopia and Spirit, Power and Soul. The audiences, who comprised both young people who had never seen him perform before and seasoned admirers, stood up because they were witnessing a live, evolving artist in real time, and he had not lost any of his artistic edge. He performed at the Post-Punk Stars Reunion, the Forever Now Festival, in Milton Keynes in 2025. Marr stunned everyone with a strong solo performance when he returned to the stage with Matt Johnson of The for the first time in more than 3 decades. Together, they performed Dogs of Lust and The Beat, N Generation when they were more at peace with the past than they were recalling it. Glancing back, they grinned. Marr shook his head when asked if the Smiths could reconcile. This was particularly true following rumors that Morrissey was amenable to the proposal. He was not persuaded by a £5 million offer for a 2025 tour. He stated, "I don't do things just for money. And I'm not going back to a place I left to hide what happened." Johnny Marr still leads a life that is different from that of any other rock star of his era. He still lives with his high school sweetheart, Angie, is a vegetarian, abstains from alcohol and narcotics, and runs early in the morning. Actually, he only updates on his personal website when he has anything significant to say and avoids social media. Additionally, he occasionally returns to his childhood pastime of making sneakers by hand rather than writing music. Additionally, he continues to collaborate with Hans Zimmer on music for small films, keeping one foot in the cinema industry where sound must have personality and names don't matter as much. Given his advanced age of 60, Johnny Marr doesn't need to produce hits year to demonstrate his legacy. Because of the way he performs, lives, and keeps quiet when it's appropriate, he has developed a unique effect that is difficult to identify yet impossible to ignore. To get attention, Johnny Marr never shouted. He didn't cling to the past, quarrel with the media, or exploit controversy to gain more attention. Like a heartbeat amid an endless realm of music, he has been quiet, steady, and inventive for over 40 years. The life of Johnny Marr was never a Hollywood success story. From being an Irish working-class youngster in Manchester who always felt different to becoming the Smiths' soul, he had numerous creative phases while ever becoming mired in a single identity. It served as a means of maintaining your integrity amidst the chaos. It was a portrait of a modest, powerful, silent, an individual artist. He has never received the most Grammy nominations. However, hundreds of bands picked up guitar playing because they heard Marr's glistening chords on this charming man and realized that music could be lovely without being ostentatious, not because they wanted to become famous. 60-year-old Johnny Marr continues to move forward without a plan or history to guide him. He does this because he understands that a true artist is someone who can persevere even in the face of lack of support, not someone who has achieved success in the past.